Welcome, Degens far and wide, to another edition of the Degen Docs. That is right, folks. We are the Degen Docs, and tonight we have a very special episode because we're talking about our 2024 fantasy football dudes and duds. We're telling you which guys, we're going to go round by round for 10 rounds, telling you which guys you want to target in that round and which guys you should probably fade. We're also, of course, going to kick it off with training camp news. Look, folks, there has been a ton of injury news. We are only 20 days from NFL kickoff, so join us, crack a cold one if you'd like, and let's get this thing started. This Degen Docs edition, this 2024 Fantasy Football Dudes vs. Duds edition of the Degen Docs on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code SGPNDOC, all caps, one word, SGPN Docs, to claim your first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code SGPN Doc. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm's college football and NFL projections are now live. Look, folks, college football, 10 days, less than 10 days away. 8 days away, something like that. Kicks off the 24th. Absolutely stoked for that. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right, folks, it's what you came for. We're about to kick this off. I am your host, the OG Degen Doc, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my brother in degeneracy, Mr. Derek Bennett, a.k.a. Professor Locks. How we doing tonight, brother?
Doing well. I have taken the liberty of preparing myself for tonight's episode by doing basically, I think, at least 5, maybe 6 mock drafts.
Okay.
And, the issue with mock drafts are a good time for the first 3 or 4 rounds. And then you realize that you're drafting against 2 other dudes and a bunch of auto drafts.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, mock drafts, not a thing for me anymore. It's all about underdog fantasy, right? Best ball. Yeah. That way you can get, hey, we've got to get in our 150 for Best Ball Mania 5.
For sure.
It's a good way to have some skin in the game. It's nice because, like you're saying, it's a typical situation when you try to play poker for no money, right? That's quickly exactly. Are like, no one gives a shit. Everyone's going all in when they've got a pair of 2s and everything like that. So same with the mock drafts. That's why promo code at SGPNDOC, $250. What is that? What did we break that down to? 10?
10. That's 10.
Is that math?
Entries.
25 times 10, 250. Look at that.
Hey, we went to school for a long time. Not math related, though. Not math related. But hey,
what are you drinking there tonight? What do we got on tap?
Yeah, so I'm currently drinking a barrel strength single barrel bourbon from Watershed. Shout out to my buddy Sherpaul over at 2 Ounce Whiskey, who's also a doctor, by the way. But yeah, he's a
part of the Degen Doc fam.
Yeah, it's all right. He is a whiskey connoisseur. It doesn't really matter if it's bourbon, Scotch, Irish whiskeys, Canadian whiskey. He's all over the map. So if you are a bourbon lover, whiskey lover in general, take a look at 2 Ounce Whiskey.
Yeah, definitely does some great stuff over there. As you guys probably will find out very quickly if you haven't already, Derek is definitely the more distinguished drinker when it comes to the two of us. I am rocking, I realized I ran out of my whiskey, and I'm rocking Busch Light Peach.
Finally.
I don't know if you have these,
Elijah Craig, huh?
But they're actually not bad. They're a great morning beer. I found myself drinking at 9 a.m. a couple times this weekend.
Solid.
And just remember, folks, we talked about tailgating, those noon kickoffs, those 1 p.m. kickoffs. Busch, if Busch wants to sponsor us, go ahead. They're not a sponsor of this podcast, but I will say, shout out to y'all. Y'all make a really good morning.
Busch Peach is definitely not my go-to. Like you said, I do drink a lot of bourbons, a lot of whiskeys, but nice cold beer is always welcome, especially on a hot day. Those Busch Peaches are pretty solid.
That's what I'm saying. They're not bad. All right, so let's talk about some current events here. Let's talk about why don't we start with not circa? Why don't we start with our
first? Hey,
what
countdown? 20 days.
20 days. Yeah, 20 days. There's even some football on right now. It's week 2 preseason. Who the hell's playing? I know the Eagles are, but I'm like, Nah,
Patriots? I
I
think it's
didn't look.
Eagles Patriots tonight.
They were. Yeah, that makes sense. Joint practices together. So yeah.
Yeah.
But which I saw, by the way, didn't you see the Eagles getting torn up on their defensive line? I was seeing some beat reporters saying like multiple sacks for the Patriots. Who we're going to talk about this in a second, but no Matt Judon was out there.
See,
So
I thought it was the opposite. I thought the Patriots line was getting absolutely shredded.
was it? Maybe it was my.
I'm pretty sure
reading.
the Patriots line was absolutely getting shredded.
Okay.
And but Drake May evidently was still firing darts. I think I saw something that he was like 9 for 9 in 7-on-7 and 11-on-11. So
For Drake Mays and his family's future, man, they got to keep him out for at least a few, like that. That the offense is going to be really bad. But
for sure,
let's talk about our 2024 Olympic gold medalist, United States women's soccer.
Round of applause.
It's been well documented that my love for real football. I just heard football and I started getting into it. So I was getting into soccer a little bit this offseason. Man, they're a young team. For anyone who like didn't like the last regime with all of their kind of PC-ness and kind of annoyingness that they got, this is a new young team, all kind of kicked out the old wave, really got very few veteran players. And there's this top three, they call them the Trident, Julia Smith, Mallory Swanson, and one other player who I wanted to quiz you on. Do you know who this woman is? Any idea?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
I'll give you a hint.
Okay, perfect.
Her name is Trinity Rodman.
Really?
Does that help you at all?
Really?
Yes. It is Dennis Rodman's daughter.
Wow. Okay.
I did not know this. I was like watching the games, and when someone else watching was like, "Oh yeah, that's crazy that she's like comes from the fan." But I was like, "What are you talking about?" Yeah, that is, I think, his youngest daughter.
High-end athletics, running.
Yeah,
deep in
I mean, dude,
veins.
she's a stud. She's a stud.
Really?
You can tell with the long pink hair. She's a little like out there, whatever.
Well, I mean, Pops like to throw in some funky shades in his hair as well. So
compared to her father, I mean, that's male and tamed and mild mannered. But no, man, hey, just shout out to a little bit of soccer keeping us with some things. They brought home some nice coin for me. Had a nice little hefty bet on them to bring home the gold, and the ladies did that for us. So we know we're a little patriotic on this show. So anytime
never hurts when the account balance starts to get a little bit higher rolling into college football season here next week, and then the NFL a week or two after that. So
exactly. No, I mean, hey, if you can win me money and represent your country well and represent the United States of America well,
we're
fine on
all fronts. Yeah, for sure.
So enough of that fake football. It's time. We're 20 days out, folks. It's time we turn the page and we talk about some real football. So we're going to be talking about some NFL training camp news, 2024 training camp news. So we're going to kick it off with a team that I was pretty low on coming in. If you check out the division previews, the first division preview we did, NFC South, the Atlanta Falcons. Not a team that I am super high on as far as the team aspect. We can talk about fantasy here in a little bit. But one of the reasons I did not like this team was because of their defense. It was a very, very pedestrian defense. Not a lot of big names. Not a lot of players that are even – it don't have to be a big name, but guys who have made an impact in the NFL.
Yep.
And they went out and signed 2 Pro Bowlers in back-to-back days, and that is safety Justin Simmons was signed today by the Atlanta Falcons, and Matt Judon, outside linebacker from the Patriots there. Now, it did come after their third-round rookie, Traylon Bryce, tore his ACL, and their safety, DeMarco Helms, hurt his ankle, is going to miss significant time. So they were kind of pushed a little bit. But what are you thinking now after adding these 2 former Pro Bowlers here?
Yeah, I mean, it automatically makes me think that they're in a better position than they were before. I mean, both of them Judon coming off of injury, and Justin Simmons coming in there.
Yeah.
At least there are a couple names, right? And I think when we went through the division previews, like it was hard to find 2 names that you even recognized on that defense. So we were talking about this before coming live, but their defensive secondary all of a sudden looked pretty good. Now
Yep.
up the front seven still has some major questions, but you bring in a guy like Judon, you still have Grady Jarrett there.
Yep.
Again, coming off an injury, but things are looking better on the defensive side of the ball. We'll see if that offense can still score enough points.
Yeah, no, AJ Terrell on one corner, and then your safeties being Justin Simmons and Jesse Bates. That's a decent secondary. Whether Mike Hughes and D. Alford are going to step up and do anything, there's still definitely questions there. But for me, it's the front seven. Look, Judon is coming off a biceps tear. He's an older player. Yes,
sure.
he's definitely automatically, their best lineman. Grady Jarrett is a great player, but he's coming off an ACL tear, which is even harder to come back from, right? And he's got less time than Judon does. So your two best guys coming off big injuries. And then, there's just a lot of guys like Zach Harrison, David Amieta, Caden Ellis, Troy Anderson, Arnold Mbakide, like Lorenzo Carter, again, just not a lot of faith. So I will say, hey, I was thinking they potentially had a chance to be the worst defense in the league before they signed these two guys. Now it's a situation where, they could potentially be middle of the pack, but I saw some people saying like, "Oh, this is going to be a really good defense now." Like, let's pump the brakes there. I don't think they break the top half of the league.
Yeah, I'm thinking 15 to 20 ish range.
Yeah.
I think they're like you said, kind of middle of the pack. They definitely needed another pass rusher, like we talked about back in division previews when we talked about the Falcons. Why we take Michael Penix over some defensive help? Maybe.
Yeah.
But they do pick somebody up, and we'll see how long it takes Judon to really get his motor running down in Hotlanta.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the injuries, what we do best, our injury analysis here. So we're going to run through really the top 6 injuries in our eyes. If you do have any questions about specific guys, please just drop the questions in the chat. We'd love to get the chat popping off. Again, our whole goal is to create a nice little Degen Docs family where we're cashing bets and winning fantasy leagues.
Yep.
So first guy we're going to talk about, probably the biggest injury of the offseason as far as significance and, timelines, JJ McCarthy. I know one of your favorite guys coming out of Michigan there. Quarterback went from it really kind of was a weird sequence where he played a preseason game, entire preseason game, didn't really show much signs of being hurt. He went in the next day. He said, hey, guys, I got some kind of minor soreness in the knee. It's called knee soreness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were like, all right, we'll hold you out. We'll do some imaging just to check. And then they find out, well, shit, you have a meniscus tear. Now, we put out some videos, from videos for it. It's that Bud Light, man. What is it? Bush, whatever.
Don't get that. Bourbon.
I know. I need my whiskey. But look, when you have a meniscus tear, the biggest thing is there's huge variability in recovery timelines. There's really 3 treatment options. You could do rehab for about 4 to 6 weeks and non-surgical. And then you can even have a meniscus repair or a meniscectomy where a meniscectomy is they just go in and cut it out. Cut out the damaged tissue, a debridement. It's also called a resection, whatever it could be. So that one, it's worse for your long-term health because you only have so much meniscus, which is kind of a protective layer, absorption layer, right? But once it's gone, it's gone. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, it only comes with like a 3 to 6 week recovery timeline. So guys are back to playing sooner. But for a rookie quarterback who they're trying to be the franchise guy, probably wasn't going to be the best scenario. And then you have a repair where they actually go in and repair their meniscus, which is best case for long-term health. Can't always happen due to location and size of the tear, but that's what wind up happening. So, what's your takeaway from JJ McCarthy there?
Yeah, no, I think it's mostly just the surprise of, like you said, just kind of the timeline. I mean, he played end of last week. All of a sudden, hey, he's
pretty good.
He's getting an MRI on his knee because he has some soreness. Cool. And he's out for the season, which is kind of a bummer. At the end of the day, obviously you never hope for somebody to get injured. You want them to stay healthy throughout their entire careers, but we know this is football. That's not going to happen. And like you were saying, that with those meniscus type injuries, there are so many different routes that you can take. We were hoping that this was just kind of one of those things where, you have a little bit of fraying kind of a thing, maybe go in and clean it up kind of a thing. But it sounds like he must have had a fairly significant tear. Again, kind of depends on where that tear is, but they had to go in and suture, staple, put that meniscus back down. Meniscus has very little healing properties, except for the very outer edge. So it must have been deep enough for them to actually physically go in and surgically repair it. Good thing is, it's not so much or such a big injury where it's going to be a concern come this time next year.
Yeah,
and it's going to be better off,
Oh yeah, for his career,
for his career, for his quality of life, once he's up in his 40s, 50s, 60s. So, wish JJ McCarthy all of the best over the next 8-10 months
on the sideline.
But yeah, it is kind of a bummer for the Vikings.
Yeah, no, and look, hey, I was obviously rooting for him. He looked fairly good in the preseason. He did have an interception, but he had 2 touchdowns. I thought he showed some flashes.
Although this is like shades of the OSU Michigan game over the. He's throwing to open wide receivers.
Hey man, what do you got to do? All you can do is what's in front of you, right?
I know.
You can play what's in front of you. But yeah, I don't think I never thought he was going to be amazing. I had bet that he was. I think when it was 6-1 or 4-1, one of those. I bet that he was going to be the week 1 starter. I just thought it was a lot closer than those odds were because the other guy is Sam Darnold.
Yep.
And so obviously that bet is now in the trash. Flush that down. That's not going to come home for us. But it does mean that my New York Football Giants will be playing Sam Darnold week 1 at home. And, I'm sure he's been back since, but let's not forget when our boy was seeing ghosts in that same stadium, in MetLife Stadium. So I'm excited as a Giants fan that we now definitely get Sam Darnold.
Hey,
let's keep it.
Speaking of your Giants, though, your boy Malik Nabers. He's kind of has a bone ankle right now too, right?
Don't disrespect Malik Nabers like that. All right. The future leader in rookie receiving yards we put him out at 6-1. Now he's all the way down to like 350. He picked up a minor low ankle sprain. Thankfully for the entire state of New Jersey and New York and my mental health, Malik Nabers is good to go. He practiced today. It's a minor low ankle sprain, not the one like we're going to potentially talk about in a second here, where we don't have a lot of concern. Typically a 1 to 2 week thing. He's got plenty of time to ramp up for the season. At this point, I don't even want him to play in the preseason game. Put that man on bubble wrap and just let's go for week 1. But yes, if you had any concern about Malik Nabers, he is good to go. Let's hope the Giants are smart. I know Daniel Jones is playing this weekend against Texans for the first time off his ACL.
Yep.
So do they want to get him some reps with Jones? Potentially. I don't think the risk is worth the reward, but
agree.
I'm not the head coach of the New York Football Giants. So, but going back to the Vikings, I do want to bring something up here. Let's talk about wide receiver Jordan Addison. He picked up. First of all, one of the things we learned in this preseason off training camp, the cart means absolutely shit because there's guys getting carted off. There's guys getting air casted, a la running back Tyrone Tracy, who are back the same day in meetings and perfectly fine with a low ankle sprain, right? Yep. So when you're seeing the cart, just be cautious. A lot of these guys, like you were talking about, their facilities in the off season are further away from the locker room. So the cart is really just a modes of transportation. Like, hey, let's not let the guy limp 200 yards. Let's just go ahead and give him a ride.
Up a hill, up 3 flights of stairs. Yeah,
exactly. Let's be the cart isn't exactly what it means as when we get to the regular season when they're actually at their facilities.
When guys are getting carted off the field in an NFL stadium, that's not a good sign. But yeah, like you were saying, preseason training camp, especially with some of these teams going to other facilities, like not keeping it in house. Like when we were in PT school, I actually did one of my clinical rotations out at St. Vincent.
Yeah.
Where the Steelers have their training camp.
In Latrobe,
dude, the hills over there, there's no wonder. Getting them back up to the facility, up to the AT room.
Yeah.
Good luck, because they would have to climb 6 steps or 6.
Oh wow. Okay. Stairs. Yeah. See, that's so. Yeah. Maybe it's literally just a logistics thing sometimes.
Yeah.
But a guy who was carted off and turned out to not be as major as we thought. Jordan Addison, wide receiver, former Pitt guy, H2P baby, and not a USC guy, former Pitt guy. Let's make that very clear. But he got carted off with an ankle injury. Now it's been shown that it's not serious. However, I'm a little bit more concerned than market, and I'm going to pull something up here to kind of show you why. we're going to pull up the injury. So let's go ahead and pull this up here. Share the screen. All right, let's see. Shout out to the buddy Jeff who pulled this. Let's see. All right, can you see this?
Yeah.
All right, let's see this.
Who am I supposed to be looking at?
You're looking at Jordan Addison and his left ankle.
Oh, yep.
Okay, so it'll show it again in slow motion, obviously. So we're talking about a planted foot with a guy landing on the outside of his leg. And, that is a lot more concerning for what we call a high ankle or a medial ankle sprain, right? So when we say an ankle sprain, typically you think about when you roll your ankle playing basketball, low ankle sprain. That's not a really big deal. It's when your ankle rolls out. But when you have it kind of rolling in and you have especially that planted foot with the force to the outside, that's when we get a little bit more concerning because they're stronger ligaments. So even if this is a mild injury, right, it's been said it's not super serious, but a mild high ankle sprain is a 4 to 6 week recovery timeline. And it takes a while for these guys to get back to full health. Whereas a low ankle sprain, you're looking at 1 or 2 weeks and they're good to go. Yep. So what did you think, first off, seeing that? What's your take from that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the way that his ankle got landed on, there's no way that it was going to be one of those typical lateral low ankle sprains. It's going to be either that medial deltoid stronger ankle ligament, or like you said, that high ankle sprain that's more kind of on the front, a little bit higher.
Not your
part
true
of your ankle. It's not going to be your true ankle sprain. And like you said, typically is a little bit longer recovery. And a lot of times with these high ankle sprains, there ends up being a little bit of a medial, a little bit of a lateral, it kind of gets spread out a little bit more. So his foot probably swelled up like a freaking grapefruit. Again, it's one of those things that we're getting we're
20
3
days
weeks out.
20 days.
So it's definitely a little bit more concerned come week 1, week 2 for me, but long term,
absolutely,
the season.
Well, long term, I don't think so, but I think this is something where you just hear ankle injury and you hear not serious and you just assume low ankle. And I read it and I kind of saw that. I saw that until I saw the video and showed oh shit, this isn't really a low ankle sprain. This is potentially more concerning. Now, like you said, it's not something I'm absolutely out on.
He's not going to be out for 3-4 months.
No, it's not that.
Will he miss the first week or two? Potentially.
I think it's going to affect week 1, right? And you now have a Vikings team that's not going to have JJ McCarthy. They're not going to have TJ Hawkinson, and they're going to probably have a banged up Jordan Addison. So for me, I mean, obviously a little bit biased being a Giants fan, but I saw this and I bet the Giants at money line at minus or plus 100 because I was if he is still out, then I think that goes down. So, that's where I'm seeing with the Jordan Addison thing. I'm a little bit more concerned, but again, I just think he's going to still be dealing with it week 1, week 2, and then, he should be good to go from there. We got Andrew Robb in the house, our brother over there. Definitely check him out over on Fanspeak. If you want to know anything about best ball, he is your guy. He's got a question. We're going to talk about Christian Kirk. We're talking about the Jaguars wide receiver. He picked up a calf injury, right? So they're asking if the injury is going to linger into the season. We did not talk about this, so let's talk about him real quick. It was they said a minor, so grade 1 calf strain, typically a 1 to 3 week recovery timeline. The big thing here is it does have a pretty moderate re-injury risk. So that's where we're a little bit concerned. 20 days out, a few weeks out, hopefully they're not pushing him sooner than they need to. But if he pushes himself a little bit more than he needs to, and he does get a setback, that's where we're concerned, right? So it's one for me that you want to monitor, but not alarm bells. What about you?
No, I completely agree. And it's kind of one of those things that for whatever reason, last year was kind of the year of the Achilles tear kind of a thing, right? And anytime you start talking about calf things, things start snapping in the back of my head, what's his general tissue health around that area, so front part of my brain is saying he'll be fine. But like you were saying, if he ends up trying to push himself, if he starts compensating in certain ways, is he putting more pressure on other areas?
No, and calf strains to Achilles tears is one of those things anecdotally, you do hear about it. Like in the research, it's not really been super linked. It's, you know, but it's definitely something that.
But you almost always go back to like the whole Kevin Durant kind of a thing. You know, when he tore his Achilles, like he was out for 2, 3, 4 weeks with a calf strain. All of a sudden he comes back, plays like 3 quarters, and then bang,
plays a little bit too early. You know, so I do think that, you know, that situation there was it's more severe injury initially on onset. But, you know, you just want to, it's just one situation where calf strains can be tricky. So I do think Kirk overall is going to be okay for week 1. But want to monitor if he's having trouble getting back. If you're not hearing about him or you hear about a setback, that's when the alarm bells need to start going off.
For sure.
All right, folks, we got a couple more injuries to talk about. Before we do that, I want to tell you about some of the great things we got going on over here on SGPN. Sports Gambling Podcast launched their 32 NFL team previews, and they're giving out a $500 Circa future for listeners, plus the English Premier League returns. So make sure you check out the Soccer Gambling Podcast and the Premier League Gambling Podcast for your footy fix. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and of course the SGPN app. You want to download that because that is where you will also find this podcast. All right, we got a couple more.
Honestly, I think you should probably reach out to them and see if you can be a guest, because you are all about the football.
Listen, I told my wife soccer is now done. You know, you know, in this interim, I am a little bit missing the big tournaments. You know, we had the Copa Americas, we had the Euros, then we had the Olympics. But I think it's done. I think once I get the first taste, like once I get to see Georgia Tech lay some wood down to Florida State Seaman Holes in Dublin, Ireland, I think I'll be perfectly fine. The juices will be flowing. So let's go ahead and talk about a couple more guys. I want to talk about, again, we talk real football. We talk all football here on the Degen Docs, which means we talk defense because it matters to the games, right? We are not just a fantasy football pod. Obviously, today we're more heavy fantasy football, but we love to gamble. We love football, and we love making money off football. So Bills linebacker Matt Milano picked up a biceps tear in practice today. Now, I saw a report from Adam Schefter and like the main like breaking news. They're thinking about like a December return. For me, that sounds crazy. This is typically like a 10 to 11 month recovery process to get back to full health. Am I crazy to think like he has no shot of returning this year?
I think it's very, very unlikely unless the Bills, get into the playoffs, maybe even win a football game. I don't see Milano coming back. Like you said, this is typically a 10-month thing, coming back in, what would that be? 6 months.
They said December, which would be 4.
Right. And that would be absolutely bonkers. But, we just talked about Matt Judon, and I think he ruptured his bicep when?
I can tell you. Hold on. Let me pull him up here in a second.
I think it was October.
Oh, it was a while ago. He had his injury date was October 1st.
Yeah.
And he wasn't on the field. Now, that was a little bit of contract issue, but he didn't come back right away. Right. He's got 11 months in the season. Like, it's not like he was out there during OTAs or anything like that.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't see this really ending well for this season for Milano. Like I said, if they end up somehow getting to the Super Bowl, will we see Milano
with a ginormous brace on his arm?
Yeah, he'll start. We'll see the cue, and then he'll have like one of those big knee brace, basically.
Can't really move his arm.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, but it is a reminder, football is an absolutely brutal sport. So as much as we love talking injuries, no one likes being injured. It really does suck for Matt Milano, coming off a tibial plateau fracture last season that ended his season. So back-to-back likely season-ending injuries. The only thing I can think there is if he potentially didn't tear it completely. But, the way that it was presented as a full tear, then it's very unlikely to think Matt Milano comes back. So sorry, Bills fans. I don't think Milano is going to be back this season, but I have heard they do have a young rookie linebacker there that they do like. His name is evading me right now. So we'll see. They're going to need him to step up.
Yep.
All right. A couple more all on the offensive side. Some more minor that we can kind of breeze through here. Lions running back Jahmyr Gibbs. Grade 1 hamstring strain. Mild, the concern here is similar to Christian Kirk. Now, hamstrings have a higher re-injury risk than calves. They are one of the most burdensome injuries. Thank you. Burdensome injuries in the NFL because of their high re-injury rates. if you've had an hamstring injury, you can understand this. It's a situation where you simply feel better before the tissue is actually healed. So you think, oh, I feel better. I can go 100%. I can go sprint. And then boom,
run and jump and cut. And nope.
Re-injury. If I know we have trouble telling our patients, and my soldiers are a lot lower level athletes than these guys, like, please, I know this is going to feel better, but do not do anything stupid off that. These guys are used to performing at an elite high level. So for them to say, hey, I feel good, I think I can do this, I know my body, that's why we see a lot of these hamstring re-injuries. So another one where by week 1, if everything goes right, he should be okay. But I know we're both David Montgomery guys anyway. So, this is maybe just another reason that I think you want to pump the brakes on Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, if you're super in on him and Jahmyr Gibbs is your guy, we're going to be talking about our guys tonight. If he is one of your dudes, it's not a big enough injury to really sell you off him, right? So I don't want to pose it as that, but there is some re-injury risk there. Plain and simple.
For sure.
Any comments to add?
Nope, I don't think so. Let's move on to, looks like Hollywood Brown was an interesting one. With his shoulder injury. This was one that was like
kind of scary, man.
Exactly. Just based on where that injury is located, there's all kinds of, he had an SC joint sprain, so kind of sternoclavicular, kind of right in the front part of his shoulder, neck, chest area. And there's just all kinds of vascular structures, neurological structures moving through that space. And anytime we have a dislocation, things are not lined up where they're supposed to. And if we're putting extra pressure on one of those vascular veins or arteries, whatever it is, are we cutting blood flow off to another area, which could be detrimental if it's not fixed pretty quickly. So that's why he was rushed to the hospital. Turns out wasn't too big of a deal. But he's likely going to be out for 4 to 6
4 to 6 weeks was the timeline, and that fits kind of a typical dislocation, right? So, like Derek was saying, that sternoclavicular, your sternum and your clavicle come together. It was pushed backwards into those vascular structures. It really is an emergent condition, because if it's left alone for a while, or if you move, it can be really dangerous. I mean, it can be fatal, right? So that's why I was rushed. They do get a reduction. You put it back into place, the surgeon or doctor, ER doc, whatever. And then, at that point, you have to let the ligaments heal. And it's about a 4 to 6 week injury. Week 1, they play the first game. They are 20 days away. It is unlikely that Hollywood Brown plays week 1. Week 2 even sounds pretty optimistic. Those games are against the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. Pretty big games. But it does look like week 3 is kind of the most likely outcome. I would not be shocked if it was week 2 or week 4. I think I would be shocked if it was week 1. So I think he's at least missing 1 game with him. And, kind of piggybacking off that, I want to talk Rashee Rice a little bit, because this is a guy that I loved last year. I was in on him very early. And I kind of wrote him off because of this whole off the field situation. I was like, he's going to get suspended for half the season. What am I going to do? So he's got a court date of December right now. I mean, I think he definitely will be suspended, but that's 10, 12 weeks. What are you thinking with Rashee Rice? Because especially with this injury, and I don't really trust anyone else in that wide receiver room, injury or not, to Hollywood Brown. Where are you at with Rashee Rice? Like, how are you picking him at all? Are you still staying away?
I'm primarily staying away. It all depends on how the board ends up, but I'm primarily staying away. Just like you said, I mean, if he doesn't get seen in court until December, all of a sudden, if he ends up getting suspended or whatever, it's going to be in the prime part of the season. It's going to be playoff time. It's going to be playoff time. So
for both us and the Chiefs.
Exactly. Is it one of those things that you use him to get into your fantasy playoffs? I mean, sure, I guess you could do that, but then you may be shit out of luck come week 1 of the playoffs, because this dude's sitting, back in his apartment.
It's a risk. I mean, but there's also a chance he could be suspended next year. Right?
There's just so many different options. For me,
I think I am someone who was like you, was avoiding Rashee Rice he was the plague. I think I need more Rashee Rice, honestly, because I really think he could be the Chiefs wide receiver 1 for 12, 14 weeks.
I think if he's on the field, he probably will be, just because of the connection with him and Patty Mahomes. Like Hollywood Brown is kind of one of those boom and bust kind of guys. You know, it'll be interesting to see how much of a connection him and Worthy get. But we already know that Rashee Rice was his dude last year.
No, so that's an interesting one, man. That obviously when it comes to the legal stuff, like it's kind of up in the air. But now with that late court date, I'm somebody who thinks that Rashee Rice is now worth where he's going at.
Yep.
So last guy we're going to talk about here, and again, if you have questions, we're still going to be talking all fantasy today. So we still, about halfway through as we start to get into our dudes and our duds. Drop them in the chat. Let us know if you got questions. We'll absolutely love to interact with the chat and answer your questions. So Packers running back Marshawn Lloyd, the rookie out of USC, picked up a hamstring injury. Now, there's a situation where this guy just can't stay healthy, right? Everybody, fantasy community loves him. I think he's a pretty good prospect. I'm not high on Josh Jacobs. I think A.J. Dillon kind of sucks. But the dude can't stay healthy. I mean, we all want him to take that RB2 role and to start working his way into snaps, but he can't stay healthy.
Nope.
And these are key reps for a rookie. I think we both weigh these injuries a lot higher for rookies because of the reps they're missing, because of the change in game speed. He was coming off a hip flexor injury. Now he's got a mild hamstring strain. I'm not really concerned as far as week one. It's similar to the Jahmyr Gibbs things, but how much do you take this into account when you're looking at, maybe a late grab in someone like Marshawn Lloyd?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, one, as an A.J. Dillon owner last year, screw that guy. I mean,
I vividly remember those.
Holy smokes. But anyways, Marshawn Lloyd, it's one of those things that, to me, I think is a little bit more concerning, just because it's the same joint. It's the same area. It's opposite sides. Now, we go from hip flexor on the front side to the hamstrings that connect literally directly behind them. What is going on around his hips? What is going on in his thighs, right?
Yep.
And as a running back, obviously we have to have strong hips. We have to have strong legs. We have to be explosive using those things. And obviously with the hip flexor strain to start with, now hamstring flexor strain, like, is this dude just almost working too hard to where he's fatiguing everything and all of a sudden pop something
and
goes? Or it's
what training staff this is. We talked about the Packers, man. From taking 2 years to figure out that Christian Watson has huge asymmetry in his hamstrings, which is such a basic level, like, strength and conditioning principle.
We have like crossover syndrome with Marshawn Lloyd, just left to right hip.
Yeah.
Like one side weak, one side strong, one side.
And then when they had the bench press, the what was it? The speed bench press where 3 guys had a pec tear, including their head coach. So, the Packers, for me right now, if anybody gets injured on the Packers, let's just say they're out for the season.
I mean, honestly, they should really just start calling us.
Green Bay, you're a little cold for me and the wife, but if you really want to make it happen, we can make it happen. But all right, let's enough of that. Again, guys, if you got any questions about anyone, definitely put them in the chat there. But we're going to talk about now our dudes versus duds, right? We're talking my guys versus Faith. And one way we're going to do this is we're going to pull up Fantasy Pros here, just the kind of classic site to base our ADPs off. We understand Underdog's going to be a little bit different. DraftKings, Best Ball, blah, blah. Yep. We did it as full point PPR. So, let's not kind of get into the semantics of, is that round 4 versus round 5? We're telling you, this is guys we're targeting in this area, and this is guys we're staying away from. So let's go ahead and get into that. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the ADPs over here at Fantasy Pros. And then why don't you start us off with your round 1?
Yeah. So round 1, it's kind of hard to pick a dud in round 1 because, like, they're all studs. But at the end of the day, like, you start having to nitpick, like, other guys that are on the roster. And that's where, although Justin Jefferson has been, a stud with basically any quarterback that he's had so far, he didn't live up to that wide receiver 1 hype that he was getting last year. So Justin Jefferson is my dud in round 1 this year, just because, like I said, you already take a step back with either guy, JJ McCarthy or Sam Darnold from Kirk Cousins. And now JJ's not there, right? So they were already splitting reps. You got Sam Darnold, who's seeing ghosts 2-3 years ago.
No, I think that's probably a very popular pick in round one at this point.
Yeah.
I think that's been a hot debate on whether Justin Jefferson, is he QB proof or is he not? It's for me, he's more like meh. I don't have a lot of him, but if he does fall to me we're talking now, he's kind of dropping. If he falls to me around that a 9-10 range, I'll probably take him.
Sure.
But I agree to take him at 6 or, at the top part of the draft, the first round. I do think that's a bit aggressive.
Yep. Completely. Yep.
All right. Why don't I say my dud then?
Go for it.
Probably not a shocker to those that, as you know, I'm a Giants fan, but I'm going with none other than Mr. Benedict Barkley himself. Currently, as of this, going in the first round, around number 9. What would he be? The 4th running back taken off. I think that's, Mr. Benedict Barkley himself. I think that's just way too high. I talked about, multiple reasons when I took his under, I believe 5 or 6.5 rushing touchdowns. He plays with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts had 15 rushing touchdowns. So if you're going to try to tell me that you're talking me off Jonathan Taylor because of AR-15 and his rushing potential, but you're then in the same breath going to tell me about Saquon Barkley and how he's going to have all this amazing, touchdown regression on a better team, I'm calling bullshit. So, and I don't think that this Eagles team is, obviously, yes, they're a better team than the New York Football Giants right now. I'm not a fucking lunatic. But that offensive line just lost one of the best centers we've ever seen as far as, with Jason Kelce. And, yes, Mailata's a good player. Lane Johnson's a good player. But Landon Dixonson's, Cam Jurgens, and Tyler Steele, who just got hurt today in this game, those guys are unproven to me. I know they have a good offensive line coach. I get it. But I don't think that Saquon Barkley is going to come in and be a generational guy. And let's not forget, he's had his trouble with injuries, whether it's been high ankle sprains or ACL tears. Saquon Barkley is not the same Saquon Barkley that when he was coming out of Penn State his rookie year. So that's my dud in round 1. Who is your dude?
I absolutely love Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, this dude, like,
dog.
He's a dog mentally, physically, on the field, off the he's a stud. And again, first round, it's hard to pick dudes because they're all dudes versus duds. But like, looking at the rest of that roster, who's the second receiving threat? Sam Laporta, probably.
Oh yeah, right? For sure.
Khalif Raymond, he's not getting that.
Yeah, I mean, and can Jameson Williams stay healthy yet be consistent?
Exactly. So I mean, especially looking PPR, I absolutely love Amon-Ra to, probably average 7-8 catches a game, 75 yards.
Oh yeah.
Easy. And yeah, I think he's just gonna get a ton of volume this year. Who is your dude in the first round?
No, first off, I love that pick because I took him on Raw 11, 12 to 1. I've seen him. I haven't checked recently to lead the NFL in receiving yards. I think he's that level of guy. I think people forget. I mean, he was 3rd last year and he was 2nd in catches. Like this dude is going to be a target machine,
for sure.
And he's a stud. And he was playing hurt last year, right? We all, if you've seen receiver, you've seen that the guy was playing with a pretty big oblique strain. That shit hurts. Like that was not fun to deal with, playing through a turf toe. Like, I know it's the NFL, guys are going to get banged up, but this oblique strain's like pretty damn serious, man. So yeah, I love that. My guy is Breece Hall. This is a guy who I wanted to fade last year. I did fade him a little bit early in the season, coming off an ACL tear. But holy shit, what he did in year 1 off an ACL tear, and now he came out, we showed the report, he said he's finally feeling healthy. So if that was like a limited Breece Hall, I can't imagine what we're going to see with 100% Breece Hall. I think he's a guy who absolutely has a shot to be not only the number 1 running back in fantasy football, but the number 1 player in fantasy football. So I really like Breece Hall. I don't think you can draft him too high. Obviously, it's really hard to not draft Christian McCaffrey at the 1, or Lamb, Hill. Obviously, those guys are proven, but if you want to get a little bit unique, I have no problems taking Breece Hall.
No, I absolutely love that pick because, assuming Aaron Rodgers stays healthy this year, all of a sudden that opens up a ton of options for Breece Hall as well from a passing standpoint, out of the backfield, but also is going to space that defense out a whole hell of a lot more than the MILF Hunter Zach Wilson had last year. So
yeah, I know that's a great point because he was playing against stacked boxes too.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, if Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams can do some things, and Alan Lazard and Tyler Conklin. Yeah, I'm like, why do I say Cockett? But Tyler Conklin. We'll play some against some not so stacked boxes. All right, round 2. Let's get into it. I'll kick off this round with my dud. Some of these rounds, I'm gonna have a guy and have a little bit of an honorable mention. But for me, let me go ahead and scroll down to what we would call round 2 territory. For me, it's my dud for this round is Puka Nacua. I think that, he's dealing with a little bit of the knee strain. I don't think that's going to be super serious. I think he's going to be fine for week 1. We talked about it already. But I think that we forget. It's really just kind of a little bit of a buy on Cooper Kupp. I think people forget how good of a receiver Cooper Kupp is.
Yep.
I think that Puka Nacua isn't the red zone threat that Cooper Kupp is. And I think that you're drafting Puka Nacua right now at what he did last year at his basically ceiling. And I don't see it happening this season. I am a little bullish on the Rams, so I'm not saying that I don't think he's going to have a terrible year, but I just think for, barely missing the first round, kind of being one of those first guys out, I think that is too high for him because I think him and Cooper Kupp are going to eat into their targets, right? They're going to kind of cannibalize each other a little bit, similar to the Houston Texans situation. I don't think he's going to be the clear-cut number 1 alpha wide receiver that everybody thinks he was. And in a very similar fashion, I will throw in Devon Achane to that backfield because I think, look, I talk about it all the time. The Lions situation with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery and the Dolphins situation with
Raheem Mostert
and Devon Achane, right? Everyone in the fantasy community sees how electric these guys are, and we think that we want to give them 300 touches.
Yep.
They're not 300 touches guys, and you know who knows that? It's Dan Campbell and Mike McDaniels. They want that guy that's going to give them 3 to 5 yards in a cloud of dust, and that's Raheem Mostert, and that's David Montgomery. So I'm always going to buy on those guys because people just love the flashy things. They love to see the new things in the store. They're like kids in the candy store trying to grab what's flashy. So those are kind of my 2 duds. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think that I'm not a huge Achane fan as well. Like you said, I mean, Raheem Mostert, I think he had 18 touchdowns last year.
Yeah, I think 18. I can check for you, but that is
I mean, he's probably going to be that guy within the 10-yard line again. So I would not be surprised.
18 rushing.
If they really share snaps really up and down the field, but especially Mostert gets the favor of those snaps within the 10-yard line and gets more touchdowns than Achane does. As far as Puka goes, I have never been a fan of those of taking one of those wide receivers when he has a good running mate. Jamar Chase always kind of scares me. AJ Brown always kind of scares me because they have a second dude that is also an absolute stud, in Devontae Smith and T. Higgins. Same thing out in LA with Puka and Cooper Kupp. So it's kind of what you like, who you like, kind of a thing. Yeah. But like you said, Cooper Kupp is an absolute dog. And he's going to be, or at least should be, healthier this year. At least coming into the season. So
yeah, and I will shout out Andrew Robb because he was absolutely one of the first people on Puka Nacua before the season started. So shout out him because there was very little people that pulled that out of their ass. All right, so who's your dud for the second round?
Yeah, so I took a wide receiver in the first round as a dud as well, and saying that he was kind of quarterback proof to a certain extent, at least to start with. Devontae Adams is not so much quarterback proof as we kind of saw last year. I mean, he is still obviously a a stud wide receiver. He's a wide receiver 1, but I just am not a fan of O'Connell or Gardner Minshew
Yeah.
out there in Vegas. Like, I just don't think he's gonna be one of those top, what is he, wide receiver 7, 8, something like that.
Let me look for you. He is. Where do I see? Oh, wide receiver 10.
10. Yeah. Could he put up a top 10 year potentially? I see him probably more as like a 18, 20 type of wide receiver. So it's just a little bit high for me. Again, if he falls towards kind of the late part of second round, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's similar to the Justin
third,
Jefferson
maybe.
argument, right? Like if he really, I mean, especially Aiden O'Connell, what they were winning games with like 10 completions, maybe.
Yep.
Like he had
Yep.
some pretty like abysmal numbers. So
Right.
I don't hate this. I do like Devontae Adams as a player, so I hate to fade him.
Right.
But it's hard to argue with your argument there.
Mhm.
All right, let's go through our dudes, and then I know Andrew's got a question about Chubb in the chat that we'll get to. But let's
Sure.
get through our dudes. We'll start picking up the pace here.
Yep.
Round 2, my dude, Chris Olave. I've talked about him. Similar to Amon-Ra, who's the wide receiver 2? I know it's Raheem Shaheed, but
Yep.
who's the tight end? And I know I'll talk about, Johnson in a little bit
Yep.
as we get down lower, but Taysom Hill. I think Kamara is probably your biggest threat as far as taking targets away. But
Sure.
Chris Olave is a guy who's gone over 1,000 yards each of his 2 years.
Yep.
He is someone where Derek Carr is capable. I think he's more capable than, Sam Darnold and Minshew,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think he can force feed him the ball. I just think it's a bit of a volume play there. I think people are forgetting how Olave centric this passing attack needs to be and is going to be. So that's it for me. Chris Olave is my dude for the second round. What about you?
Yeah, I absolutely love Kyren Williams. It's kind of one of those tier 2 running backs, if you will. I think out in LA, that offense, they have weapons all over the place. That box should never be
Yep.
full, for Kyren Williams to be running through. So I absolutely love him from that standpoint. Obviously, we talked about how that Rams offensive line's kind of banged up here early on. But hopefully, I mean, obviously I had to take a few weeks ago that the Rams just can't stay healthy, and I'm just not a big Rams fan this year. But for Kyren Williams' sake, for my fantasy sake, hopefully they can get right and really feed him the ball.
Yeah, no, and that's right. Great point. Cause you have the 3 offensive linemen who are week to week. You had Jonah Jackson, Rob Harvenstein, and I believe Alaric Jackson as guys there. So if they all have a chance to be healthy for week 1, it's just, one to monitor for sure. Definitely for early on in the betting lines. And we'll talk about that as we get closer. All right. Let's talk about Nick Chubb real quick. Updated thoughts on when he plays. I know we've done Chubb a couple times. They put out the kind of hype video of him squatting a gajillion pounds. And again, doesn't really impress us from a ACL rehab standpoint. He's a stud. He's a monster in the weight room. But I think we both talked about, hey, man, if he can come back by like week, even like 8, I think that's a success. But I don't think I think he's going to be on the pup. I don't think we see him until I think week 6 is like the earliest, in my opinion.
Agreed.
He's got a whole year to recover, but when you talk about these multi-ligament injuries, you typically closer to 12 to 15. It's not just an ACL tear alone. He had 2 surgeries, right? So I do think he plays this season, but I don't think he's, the Nick Chubb that we saw. So we are both kind of lower on Nick Chubb. Have you changed your kind of opinion at all?
Nope, not at all. I think, week 8 to 10 is probably where I would feel most comfortable thinking about starting him from a fantasy standpoint. Even if he comes back, like you said, week 6, week 7, he's not going to be the same guy.
Don't throw him out there.
He's going to be on a snap count. That Cleveland offensive line has some dudes up front, but I'm thinking he's one that come week 8, week 10, even a little bit later than that, he might help you win your playoffs, but he's not going to help get you there.
Yeah, I mean, if I know he's going a little bit higher nowadays, but if you can get him late enough and you're solely using him for that late playoff push and kind of the playoffs, and that's your thinking,
Yep.
I can't fault you. I wouldn't do it personally, but
Yeah.
but if you're drafting him and expecting him to be ready by week 4 and be like, excuse me, a starting running back for you for most of the season, yeah, I think you're setting yourself up for
That's a
failure.
play where you kind of think ahead, come week 4, week 5. Hey, let's see if we can trade for Nick Chubb, rather than drafting him out of the gate.
Yep, exactly. All right, let's keep moving on here. Round 3, I will start. Why don't we switch it up here? We'll start with my dude for round 3. It's gonna be
Yeah.
Michael Pittman.
Yeah.
Michael Pittman Jr. I like that. I'm finding myself more and more liking that Colts offense. I think whether Anthony Richardson stays healthy or not, I bet on Joe Flacco a lot last year, and he won me a decent amount of money. The guy was slinging the bar all over the yard, so
Yep.
throwing for over 300 yards multiple times. So listen, Michael Pittman is another. I mean, the formula is pretty easy for me as far as guys who are just going to get a bunch of targets. I think he has the potential to have like a 30% target share. So for the situation where Michael Pittman, you can get him in the 3rd round. I think he is a wide receiver 1, an alpha wide receiver, and I think he's someone who's going to have a ton of targets. So a pretty easy sell for me. Who's your dude for round 3?
Yeah, no, I'll definitely co-sign your Michael Pittman and raise you a Deebo Samuel. Like whatever the hell's going on out in San Francisco with the whole Ayuk thing, like at this point, from a Steelers fan, I hope he just stays there. Not really. That's a lie. I really hope he comes to Pittsburgh. But that offense was just different when Deebo was on the field. Those few weeks that he was out last year was when they really started struggling from an offensive standpoint. And whether Ayuk ends up staying in San Francisco or not, Deebo is kind of one of those multi-purpose weapons coming out of the backfield, obviously as a receiving threat. So I've always kind of been a Deebo Samuels fan, just from the standpoint that they use him so many different ways.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think Deebo, I mean, I've talked about I like Deebo. I like him through the air. I like him on the ground.
Yep.
Especially, Chris McCaffrey dealing with a minor calf strain. He should be good to go for week 1, but he had a shit ton of touches last year. It's hard to ignore. I know Chris McCaffrey is I mean, he's different. He's a guy who takes care of his body on another level. But that's a lot of touches last year. So if he gets nicked up, I think they use him on the run game anyway, so they might throw him back there for some goal line stuff. So it's hard to argue with Deebo for that. All right, let's go through our duds, and then we got a question about we're going to be helping Matt out with his team. Well, he already drafted him, so we'll kind of tell him how he did and a quick thoughts there. So we'll get to you in a second, Matt. Let's get this duds here for the 3rd round. Josh Jacobs for me, the guy I've talked about. He was super inefficient last year. He had a shit ton of touches. I think that, if Marshawn Lloyd can fucking stay healthy, I think that they kept A.J. Dillon for God knows what reason. They're going to give him some touches. So I do think it's a little bit more of a running back committee. And I also am not sold on that offensive line. They got rid of 3 guys that have been kind of stalwart starters for them. So they've got some improving guys with some guys that, I'm all about chemistry when it comes to the offensive line. You're starting a 7th round pick for Rasheed Walker as your left tackle. Zach Tom's working his way back from a pec injury. Jordan Morgan picked up an injury. They're a rookie who's also, another rookie on that offensive line. So I don't think people are talking about that enough. I know offensive line isn't sexy, but it's a huge part of the game. So for me, that's one of the main reasons why I'm fading Josh Jacobs.
Sure. Yeah, no, and mine it's kind of hard to say, but I am fading Patrick Mahomes. Like from a fantasy standpoint, like taking him in the 3rd round, like we've already talked about who are his options. Like, is it Rashee Rice? Is it Marquise Brown? Is it obviously Kelsey's still there, but like from a fantasy standpoint, he's not a running threat through the regular season. He starts to pick that up come postseason. And, I think this Chiefs offense kind of showed was basically a shell of itself most of the season last year. So I'm fading Patrick Mahomes just from a fantasy standpoint, not from an overall quarterback standpoint. He would be my first overall pick, as he would be most. But from a fantasy standpoint, I think round 3 is just a little bit early for Mahomes, especially when you can get other guys that are a little bit more mobile or going to pick you up some rushing touchdowns around that round.
Yeah. Just to clarify, so we don't get clipped and made fun of for eternity. In
Uh-huh.
real football, Patrick Mahomes is the dude among dudes.
That's
But
right.
for fantasy football, yeah,
Sure.
he can be a little bit hard. I don't hate taking him, but he's also a guy I don't find myself taking a lot.
Yeah.
So I can't really argue with you there. I think he's kind of middle of the road for me. All right, Matt, let's check out his team here and give him a quick thoughts on how he did. So we went Bijan, Laporta, Nico Collins, Ayuk, Pickens, Najee, DeAndre Swift, Purdy, Zeke, Goldilocks, and Trevor Lawrence, and Jerome Ford there. Quick thoughts here. I will say that one, he potentially has a shit ton of Steelers on his team, so I'm sure you like that.
Yeah.
Especially if the Ayuk trade goes through.
That's right.
We're big on Najee. We're big Najee fans.
Yep.
I think Najee is a good bet. I think that's a good pick. For me, I'm a little bit nervous about. I think Bijan he's not someone I'm fading, but I don't know. All right, why don't you give your thoughts while I collect mine?
So I really like Bijan. I really like Sam Laporta. Although I'm probably not taking him unless he starts to fall a little bit. There's so many tight ends nowadays that can put up a lot of points. Nico Collins will be an interesting one. He definitely has, in my opinion, probably the highest ceiling of all of those wide receivers down in Houston, just because of his connection with CJ Stroud. Ayuk, let's see what ends up happening with him. Honestly, I think from a fantasy standpoint, he's probably better off out there in San Fran. But I think from that standpoint, since you also have Pickens, I hope he is, because they're going to start sharing a lot of receptions. I, to a certain extent, like the stacking method. I don't just that Steelers offense. I don't see throwing a lot, and that's where I like your Najee pick. Swift is one that I'm not huge on this year. Again, because that Bears offense, I think, is going to be a little bit more pass happy with all the wide receivers that they have, and obviously Caleb Williams. I'm a big fan of Purdy, especially later in drafts. I think he was like a 6-7 overall quarterback last year. Zeke later in drafts, I really like because he's gonna be the guy down in Dallas. Who else they have?
Wasn't very impressive.
Yeah, and then we'll touch on Jerome Ford a little bit later. I know you're a little bit higher on him than I am.
Yeah. No, I think now my overall takeaways here that I've had some time. I like your running backs. I like Bijan. I like Najee. I like Zeke. I like Ford. I'm not a big Swift guy. I actually, he may show up a little bit later in the show. I do like Laporta. I think it's and your quarterbacks and Purdy and Trevor Lawrence. I think are pretty good with the way you got them, getting them pretty late. I think it's the wide receivers for me that are a little bit nerve wracking. It's just. You talked about the Steelers situation. If Ayuk goes to the Steelers, I don't think they have the offense to sustain two wide receivers like that. So I think we're a little bit nervous there. If he does stay in San Fran, I think the team is actually in a much better spot. So really for you, it is kind of hoping, Matt, that he does not get traded. And if he stays in San Francisco, I think you're in a really good spot. And then it's just the situation of Nico Collins. I've been kind of avoiding the Houston Texans wide receivers. I think they're all going to be pretty decent and cannibalize each other. I don't think they have the offense to sustain, 3 wide receiver ones. So I think, Nico Collins could potentially take a step back. But overall, it's a pretty damn good team. I would be pretty happy. And I think definitely if Ayuk doesn't get traded, I'm actually pretty fucking excited with this team.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead, and we're in round fucking 4. We might have to just go 8 rounds here. So we're going to pick up the pace because we're going to be talking for fucking ever. So we appreciate y'all chopping it up with us. Absolutely. Before we get into this next round, let me tell you about our friends over at Underdogs. Let me pull that up here. All right. Let's do
that.
That
is not Underdog. There it is.
Relax. All right. So, Underdog Fantasy, if you go 8-0, you can win 325x your entry or play fantasy football the right way with Best Ball. Best Ball Mania 5 is live with $15 million in prizes, 1.5 million guaranteed to the first overall winner, which we know is going to be someone from the Degen Docs fam. We'd love it for it to be us, but hey, if it's not us, next thing is for it to be one of you guys there. Underdog also just launched their season-long college football projections, higher or lower for your favorite college football players. You can also use specials and boost on all fixed entries. So sign up with promo code SGPNDoc to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code SGPNDoc. Just wanted to go over this real quick. They run a shit ton of specials and discounts all the time. This is just an example back when Pereira absolutely took out Yuri Petroyic's freaking lights and just destroyed that man. So that was a nice one to get over. And an example of their NFL season longs, we went with the lower on Jerry Jeudy. Someone we're not high on. I think the Browns, I think we like Cooper, but Deshaun Watson's hard to trust. And I think they're just going to run the shit out of the ball. And Jerry Jeudy can't stay fucking healthy. So,
hey, unless Jameis gets
Winston comes, yeah. If Winston's playing, we might have to change these projections. But
yes, for sure.
All right, let's keep this train rolling with round 4. I will let you start off. You can either choose if you want to go dude or dud first.
So let's go with dudes for round 4. So in round 4, based off of Fantasy Pros, Mark Andrews is sitting there at round 4.
Love it.
He was an absolute stud before he fractured his forearm last year.
Oh, sorry. No, it was a tibia fracture.
Tibia. You're right.
Ankle tibia.
That's right. Absolute dog. I think he's by far and away Lamar Jackson's number 1 target over there in Baltimore. And I actually found myself in an interesting situation earlier where I had already actually taken Sam Laporta, and Mark Andrews was sitting there a round or 2 later. And so I ended up taking both of them. So from a wide receiver standpoint, even Mark Andrews might be a flex option, if things end up, matching up right.
I love it. I mean, I'm a big Andrews guy. I think Mark Andrews is the number 1 option in Baltimore. I think people forget that. I understand he was out last year and, wasn't able to come back, but I love Mark Andrews. I really do think he's Lamar's favorite targets. I think the touchdown potential is going to be there. So I have no quarrels with your Mark Andrews guy at all. All right, my dude for round 4, Cooper Kupp. We talked about him a little bit when we talked about the fate of Puka Nacua. I think, hey, I know this is a bit of I'm betting on a guy who's been hurt the past 2 years, which yes, I very intimately understand that. That is definitely a little bit of a gamble. But I think if we get this right with Cooper Kupp, I think it can pay dividends. I already have a bet on him out there, 45-1 to lead the NFL in receiving touchdowns. Obviously, it's a long shot, but I just think that's the type of ceiling that he has. He's a huge wide receiver threat. Despite playing in a lot fewer games, he only had 1 less receiving touchdown than Puka Nacua. He is the guy in the red zone. Obviously, you have Kyron Williams, right? But if they're going to be stacking the boxes, I can't think of a corner in the NFL who can line up across from Cooper Kupp one-on-one and guard him from 5 yards out. So he's just a master in his route running, and he's got a great connection with Matt Stafford. We obviously saw it when they brought that Super Bowl home to LA to probably 4 people, but they brought it home. So I think that Cooper Kupp is my guy, and I will go right into my dud for round 4, and that's going to be Stephon Diggs.
Yep.
It was a little bit hard of a round to pick from, but I just think it's the cannibalization of the Houston Texans offense. I think that everyone's drafting these wide receivers at their absolute ceiling. They obviously cannot all do this. So for me, I'm gonna, if you're taking the new guy, the oldest guy, and the newest guy in the room, I think those are enough variables for me to kind of slightly fade Diggs. Again, I'm not going to be ripping on anybody if they do go ahead and take Diggs, but I think it is a situation where I'm not going to be someone who's going to be drafting a lot of Stephon Diggs.
No, I'm going to co-sign that one. Basically, like you said, it's going to be cannibalization from a target share standpoint. Also, Stephon Diggs is kind of one of those prototypical diva wide receivers. Like, what do you think's going to happen when he gets, say, 3 targets in a game? He's
Yeah.
going to start chirping at CJ Stroud, and CJ's going to be like, all right, I'll just throw it to Nico. I'm just going to throw it to Schultz. I'm just going to throw it to
Tanked out.
whoever. Yeah, Tank
Yeah.
out, and it would not surprise me if he doesn't necessarily get shut out, but there just isn't enough ball to go around down in
Yeah.
Houston.
And yeah, no, for a 4th round guy, these are still guys I'm trying to target who are,
Yep.
are the alpha of the team, right? And then
Yep.
you can make the argument that Stephon Diggs exists, but I don't think you can say it without any certainty.
Yeah,
At
with
all.
Nico still there, I think he's probably going to be that guy, especially later in the season. He really took kind of that extra step.
And we've seen Diggs kind of similar to Sam Darnold, turn into a ghost kind of later half of these past 2 seasons. So we definitely want to interest there. Let's go to round 5. I will let you kick it off. It's dealer's choice whether you want to go dud or dude.
Yeah, so let's stick with dudes because I think we're going to be kind of in the same camp as far as duds go. But this is where I typically start looking at quarterbacks. Usually those top 3, 4, 5 guys are off the board. Your Lamar Jacksons, your Jalen Hurts, your Josh Allens. Usually Mahomes. Nowadays, Anthony Richardson seems to be getting a ton of love. But there sits Joe Burrow down in Cincinnati.
You love you some Joe Burrow.
Dude, he's an absolute stud. I mean, and that offense loves to throw the ball. Like, he's gonna put up some numbers with the 2 wide receivers he has. I think both of us are fairly high on Gesicki, as a kind of a dart throw from the tight end standpoint. You lose Joe Milton. I mean, Zach Moss is there. He's a dude, but like, I don't think he's the same guy. So I'm super high on Joe Burrow.
You brought up a good point about them being super pass heavy, even with Browning. When Browning came into the game, Jake Browning came in for Burrow last year. They threw a shit ton. He was putting up multiple 300-yard games. So you got to imagine with Joe Burrow, they're going to continue that trend and throw a shit ton. I don't hate this pick. I'm not grabbing a lot of Burrow. Let me be clear, it has nothing to do with that, like, kind of fake news, wrist injury. He's never going to be the same. No, that's not why. I don't know. I don't really, I like ugly quarterbacks, man. My strategy is
you take Jalen Hurts in the 2nd round.
All right. That was a one-off. Okay. that was a one-off. He failed to me. Again, I told you it was a fade of Saquon Barkley. All right. I will never talk nicely about an Eagle, but if you have 15 rushing touchdowns, you have 15 rushing touchdowns. So that one, I couldn't do anything about it. But yeah, I don't hate your pick with Burrow. I just don't know how many times I'm clicking him. But if he fell to me, I wouldn't hate it. My guy is a guy who I think has the potential to be the tight end 1 for this fantasy season, and that's Trey McBride. Now I don't think that's like a crazy take. I think, there's actually probably a decent amount of people that feel that way. He was someone that I was on from the start of last year. You can fact check me. He was on my guys list because I was directly fading Zach Ertz old ass off an ACL tear. So, maybe a little lucked my way into that one a little bit because it was a lot more of a Zach Ertz fade, but I was high on Trey McBride. And now there's no reason to stop that. I'm going to continue to be high on Trey McBride. He's got Kyler Murray coming back. I've talked about how I'm a little bit bullish on this Cardinals offense. And partly because their defense is so bad, like awful bad, probably the worst in the league. They're going to have to score points. So, and I think Kyler Murray coming back year 2 off his ACL tear, he's going to be healthy. He's going to be able to get the bar to Trey McBride. So give me Trey McBride there. For the dud, I will start here, Zay Flowers. We just talked about Mark Andrews. If we believe that he is truly that kind of wide receiver 1 for them, that target number 1, then I can't be taking their quote unquote wide receiver 1. Right. I don't think they throw the ball enough. I think that with Derrick Henry in the backfield, that's going to add some things. I think, you have Isaiah Likely as the other guy on the tight end. You got guys like Rashad Bateman. I just don't see Zay Flowers demanding the target share that it's going to take for him to be worth the pick here in round 5.
Completely agree. The only other guy that I even considered was Aaron Jones being, or is a dud. I would co-sign your Zay Flowers, but Aaron Jones is one that, especially seeing that Minnesota backfield last year, like they weren't good. Like I don't necessarily trust Aaron Jones going from Green Bay over to Minnesota, especially with the quarterback that's going to be demanding that offense.
Yeah.
I think they're going to start to see a little bit more stacked boxes, even with Justin Jefferson out wide, especially if Hawkinson doesn't come back real soon, especially if Addison is out a little bit longer than we expect. So,
I mean, if you're playing the Vikings right now, especially early on, you got a banged up Jordan Addison, you have no TJ Hawkinson, you have Sam Darnold at cornerback, and obviously you have Justin Jefferson on the outside. I would just double team Justin Jefferson, and then I'm putting everybody else in the box.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, who else am I worried about? Jalen Naylor? Like who?
Right.
So I think that's fair. And Jones definitely had his trouble with injuries last season. He's definitely a frustrating guy to own in fantasy. All right, round 6. I'm gonna kind of breeze through this a little bit because we love talking football, but we don't want to be on it for fucking ever. So my guy, round 6, my dude, David Montgomery. Talked about it with the Jahmyr Gibbs thing. Dan Campbell loves him some David Montgomery, and so do I. He's gonna get a shit ton of touches. I don't think he's gonna be phased out. I think it's gonna be a 1A, 1B situation. Jahmyr Gibbs absolutely is the more explosive guy, but I don't think you can give someone like that a shit ton of touches. We saw what happened with Tony Pollard when he tried to become the guy, right? He went from being a Lamborghini or a Ferrari or whatever the hell they called him to a Honda Civic, right? So now I think that in order for Jahmyr Gibbs to be at his best as a football player, he kind of needs someone like David Montgomery to take those ugly yards. And I will take David Montgomery in the 6 rounds, 10 out of 10 times. My guy I'm fading in this round is DeAndre Swift. I've talked about it. I think that the Bears have a true running back committee with Roschon Johnson and Khalil Herbert, which Roschon Johnson was the first guy out to get those carries there in the Hall of Fame game. So he was even, maybe the RB2 there, and he looked pretty damn good. So I think they got 3 guys who are of starting caliber. Now, they're not like great guys, but I don't think DeAndre Swift is this great guy either. So I think it's going to be a true running back committee so that, it's hard for me to take a guy who, is he even the RB1 on his own team?
Yeah, no, as far as my dad, I'm going Ramondre Stevens up in New England. We already kind of touched on how New England's offensive line is like, it's probably the worst in the league. They were getting absolutely ran over last week by, I think it was Philadelphia's defensive line.
Yep.
Yeah, they were getting all over the quarterbacks. But Zeke was, I think, the leading rusher a year ago, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think there's just not much improvement there in New England from a football standpoint, a team standpoint. I mean, they probably just traded away maybe their best player in Matt Judon, to be honest with you. So it'll be
it's hard to run the ball when you're down by 30 every game.
Exactly. I just don't see Ramondre Stevens getting a ton of touches. I don't see him getting a ton of space from an offensive line standpoint. But from a dude standpoint, I'm going to go back to the tight end market and talk about Evan Ingram. This guy had over 110 receptions last year, especially in PPR leagues. Like, that is absolutely huge. Him and Trevor Lawrence have some sort of special connection. And from a wide receiver standpoint, I understand you bring in Gabe Davis, you draft Thomas Jr. Yeah, I don't know if you can necessarily trust either one of those guys from a true volume standpoint like you can Evan Ingram. So especially PPR, I absolutely love Evan Ingram come that 6th, 7th round.
Yeah, I am a noted Jags hater with the Goldilocks and Duval over there. But the only guys I will touch on the Jaguars is Evan Ingram. As much as it pains me as a Giants fan, I think he has a potential to be their number 1 target guy, or Christian Kirk. Both of those guys I'm cool with. I do like Ingram even a little bit more the way he's going, but those are the only 2 guys I will touch from the Jaguars. So I definitely like that pick there. All right, we got 2 more rounds, and then we're going to give you some of our deep dart throws, and then we're going to get the hell out of here. So before we do that, let me tell you about our friends over at Rhythm. That is right. Something we are both lacking a little bit in that department. So, football season is here, and the college football and NFL models are now live on Rhythm. Create your own winning betting model or let Rhythm do the heavy lifting for you. You decide what stats matter to you, and Rhythm builds a custom model around that. Or just let Rhythm and its predictive model do the heavy lifting. Rhythm uses AI projections from MIT data scientists. Rhythm has you covered from NFL Week 1 and college football Week 0. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That is sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And let me tell you about Circa Millions and Circa Survivor. Look, we love Circa. Spent my bachelor party in Circa in Stadium Swim. Sadly watching my Giants get their fucking ass kicked. But hey, Circa's got a good place. I was at least at a really fucking cool casino with a nice sports bar, so it made some things better. But Circa Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away 16 million in guaranteed prizes. Imagine the regret you'll feel if you win your office service survivor pool, but you didn't enter the Circa. That would fucking suck. You go the whole season, you pick 18 teams, right? And what's your reward? Fucking Johnny in the cubicle over give you
a $50 gift card.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, well, I could have walked away with 10 million and said, fuck all you guys and left.
Exactly.
So just get over to Circa, get into the Millions or Survivor. If you don't have your trip booked, go out. I think next weekend, 22nd through the 24th is the ultimate sign-up weekend. They've got open bars. They've got deals on hotels, SGPN 15 to save 15% off your hotel room. They've got Sean and Ryan heading out there. Go hang out with the crew. Go have a good time. You can sign up in person at Circa Sports between now and September 7th. And if you need a proxy because you don't live in Vegas because you're not a total degenerate, we have you hooked up with a proxy deal at proxy.football.contest.com to save you $50 with promo code SGP. I know I butchered that a little bit. Don't worry. It'll be in the show description, so you don't have to rely on my I'm losing of motor function as we get into this episode.
It's that Busch Light Peach.
I switched and I was like, maybe I need a couple. So probably wasn't the best one. All right. 2 more rounds, some darts those, and then we're getting the fuck out of here. So I'll let you go first, my friend. Round 7. Who's your dude? Who's your dud?
So round 7, I really like Terry McLaurin because he's their wide receiver 1, right?
I agree.
And especially with Jaden Daniels coming in. Last time I saw Jaden Daniels on a football field, he was an absolute stud. And I don't see it changing a ton here in the NFL. I think he's going to be vying for that Rookie of the Year spot. So I really do like Terry McLaurin. Somebody that I'm fading, we've already kind of touched on this, is Rashee Rice. And I'm not going to go into this a ton because we've already talked about it, but it's just the unknown with him. It's just, is he going to be suspended? Is he not? When is he going to be suspended? There's always that health thing. You bring in a Marquise Brown, you bring in a Xavier Worthy. Is he going to get the same touches as before? There's just so much up.
There's a lot of questions. A lot of questions there. I do give a little pushback on Rice, and I talked about my reasons why. But McLaurin, I do like. I think he's a really safe pick in the 7th round. I think he's a guy who has a really high floor and still has a pretty high ceiling, right? He is a guy who is their alpha. He is someone who's shown good capabilities. He's just had dog shit wide receiver play. So can Jaden Daniels elevate that? And so I do like McLaurin in the 7th round. A guy I like a little bit better is someone he also talked about in Raheem Mostert. Almost rinse repeat the David Montgomery situation in Detroit. Raheem Mostert scored 18 touchdowns on the ground and 3 touchdowns through the air. And I know what you're going to tell me, but Devon Achane, he's so much more explosive. I bet he's so much more of a receiving threat. Yeah, well, that's not the case. They both had 3 touchdowns in the air, and Achane only had 20 more yards receiving. So I don't think the gap is that far. I know everyone wants to fade Raheem Mostert because he's the old ugly guy, but he's not. He didn't play 10 seasons as the number 1 back. He didn't get a lot of touches the first 5-6 years of his career. So he's still, body-wise, relatively, young and healthy. So I think Raheem Mostert is a guy that Mike McDaniel loves, a guy he trusts, and a guy who's a red zone target. 18 touchdowns, 3 through the air, over 20 combined touchdowns. There's not many guys that can do that. And get him in the 7th round,
For sure.
that's
For
too
sure.
easy for me.
No, I'm co-signing that one day in, day out. You know, it all depends on where my roster is. Am I receiver heavy? Am I running back heavy? I'm bouncing between one of those two guys.
Yeah, no, I like it. All right, my duds. I got one in an honorable mention. Tony Pollard.
Yep.
I thought Tony Pollard had all the opportunity in the world last year. I mean, he did. He
Yep.
had a pretty good offensive line, and he had all the opportunity. Awful. There's no way to put it.
Not take advantage. Nope.
You got a situation there in Tennessee where we're not going to talk about him. You know, we're kind of nixing round 9 and 10, but round 9, my guy was going to be Tajay Spears.
Sure.
I think Tajay Spears, you know, whether he's got one ACL or not, the guy's explosive, and he's a threat out of the backfield. And it's someone where, you know, I know they brought Tony Pollard in, but they didn't give him a shit ton of money. This is not a situation where he's definitely going to be their number 1 back. I think it's a much more running back committee. They're going to feed the hot hand, and I think I trust Tajay Spears more than Tony Pollard at this point. The other guy is Jonathan Brooks. We've talked about him extensively.
Yep.
You know, ACL tear, rookie running back, tough situation. If it's similar to Nick Chubb, if you're solely betting on him as a second half of the season type guy, I do think Jonathan Brooks has the potential to be the best running back in this class in the future. Yeah. I'm just not touching him this year.
Yep.
So, all right, round 8, and then dart throws, and we're out of here. Who you got?
So I am again fading a Chiefs wide receiver. So I'm fading Hollywood Brown, mostly just because from a volume standpoint. I think with Kelsey still there, I really think this offense is going to mostly go through Pacheco for a lot of the season, to be honest with you. Hollywood Brown just is one of those boom or bust dudes that he may have 2 catches for 80 yards or 2 catches for 12.
Yep.
And there's just not much in between, it seems like, with him. So once I get into these later rounds, I'm going for either super high ceiling in terms of rookies that we just haven't seen yet, or somebody that's at least going to be fairly consistent week in, week out that I can throw in for, you know, one of my typical starters on a bye week.
Yeah. You hate the Chiefs, man. That's what we found out this episode. In fantasy, you hate the Chiefs.
From a fantasy standpoint, except for I do love Pacheco.
The Chiefs passing game.
The Chiefs passing game, I'm not super high on. Pacheco, I do like their defense. Obviously, you lose Snead, but other than that, you're running it back.
Yeah.
Guy that I like is Brian Robinson over in Washington. So I'm kind of going back to the Commanders. It'll be interesting to see what that Eckler Robinson carry share looks like. But I think that Brian Robinson is that 4 yards in a cloud of dust back that is going to get the majority of the carries. Eckler himself has come out and said that he's not that every down running back.
That's true.
So it's just kind of hard for me necessarily to really like Austin Eckler. He hasn't been that super high productive fantasy guy for a couple years now. So I think Brian Robinson, how I foresee this offense running, I think he fits in a little bit better.
Yeah, it gives the rookie quarterback someone reliable in the backfield to hand the ball off to. No, geez, I just realized Circa Millions was up there, so my apologies. You know, it's getting a little late here in the show, but it's a situation where I was really big on Brian Robinson coming into the year. I thought he was going to definitely be the RB1. Based on what I've seen out of camp now, I'm a little bit nervous that Austin Eckler is going to get a lot of the passing work, and it's going to be a lot more split than I thought it was going to be. But I'm really not taking Austin Eckler. You know, I'm curious how high he's drafting himself in fantasy. Noted fantasy football player himself, which is always great. Definitely love that.
Yep.
But yeah, I agree with the Hollywood Brown aspect. All right, my dud pains me to say it as a New York Giants fan, but Devin Singletary. Really the biggest thing for me is I don't think he's like going to be as set as that running back 1 as, you know, it's going to be on paper. Everything I've heard is talking about all the other running backs, whether it's Tyrone Tracy, whether it's Eric Gray, you know, one of those guys that's going to step up in the back end there. They just signed Josh Kelly today, former Chargers guy. So, you know, I just think that it's going to be a lot more of mixing and matching, riding the hot hand. So I'm not really taking a shot on Devin Singletary. A guy I am taking a shot on is Zach Moss. Reliable, very proven running back. 4 games last year, had over 450 yards. When he was the RB1, when he was the guy, I think he is the guy in Cincinnati. I think they are going to use him in a similar Joe Mixon role. I understand Chase Brown is the sexy pick. As you can tell, that doesn't do shit for me, right?
Yep.
I like the guy who's consistent. I like the guy who's going to get dirty and get in there and going to give you some touchdown production and not just going to kind of be a boomer bust guy. So that's Zach Moss for me. All right. We made it through our 8 rounds, do's or duds. We're going to quickly go through some dart throws, and then we're going to wrap up and get the hell out of here. My friend, why don't we just go back and forth? Just give me a dart throw, something quick, and then we'll just kind of ping pong off of that.
So a guy that I absolutely love come like round 10, round 11 is Gus Edwards over in LA with the Chargers, because we all know Jim Harbaugh is going to hand whoever, whether it's him or Dobbins, the ball, probably both of them 20 they're probably going to get 20 carries apiece. And Gus Edwards is probably going to be that goal line back in that offense. So I honestly think probably 6, 8, 10 years ago, I still remember to this day, I got LeGarrette Blount in like the 12th round of a fantasy draft, and he ended up being like RB7. And it's because he scored like 18 touchdowns that year. I see Gus Edwards taking that role this year, kind of like that Mostert role last year. So I absolutely love him.
If that hits, that hits. Yeah, I agree. Especially from the touchdown perspective. I think he is kind of, they paid him like an RB1.
Yep.
And I think that's what they're going
Dobbins coming off the injury. I don't know if I'm fully taking him. So I'm taking Gus Edwards as an RB1 in
the 10th round.
10th round, 11th round.
Yeah. No, I like that. I'll give you two quarterbacks who I'm going, rounds 10 or later. Jared Goff. I think Jared Goff has the potential to be, easily a top 10 fantasy quarterback, if not top 5. He's in a dome. He's throwing to Amon-Ra. He's throwing to Sam Laporta. He's going to throw the gives out of the backfield. If Jamison Williams does hit, he's getting a lot of those bombs, right? I think it's a team that has a great offensive line, if not the best offensive line in football. So when he's protected, when he has time, Pretty Boy Goff does some good things. And the other guy I'm going to go after is Baker. Baker Mayfield is a guy who he is a bit of a gunslinger, and he's coming off his best year of his career. He's got an offensive coordinator who's going to be a little bit more pass happy. Canales was a bit predictable in how they were going to run him first, second down, and kind of throw on third. I like Mike Evans. I like Jalen McMillan. I like Cade Otton. I think Rachaad White out of the backfield is a good option. So I do like Baker. You can get him really late. You can get him, pretty free. So that's a guy that I am targeting. All right. Who you got? Any quarterbacks you like late?
Quarterback wise, I kind of go back and forth between Tua and Stafford, just because both of them have dual threat wide receivers with Tyreek Hill and Waddle and Puka and Cooper Kupp. Like the weapons are there, right? They just have to perform. But let's talk a little bit about some literal dart throw wide receivers. Rashid Shaheed, we've already touched on him a little bit, being kind of that wide receiver 2 down in New Orleans. Like, God forbid Olave goes down.
Yeah.
He has to be that guy. I mean, he should get a fair amount of targets anyways, being a wide receiver 2, but who else is there? Jalen Polk in New England.
I like Polk.
I think he's a dart throw, but I think he could eventually be New England's wide receiver 1.
He's a good player coming out of Washington. I think he's a really good player.
Yeah, I think all 3 of those wide receivers coming out of Washington, all 3 could be absolute studs.
Yeah.
And then Josh Downs in Indy. We've both kind of talked about how we kind of have begun this love interest of Indy's offense. So I'll throw Josh Downs in there as a dart throw.
What was Downs' injury again? I'm trying to think through.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Let me look it up real quick, because I thought.
I mean, based on Fantasy Pros, he's the 200th ranked.
Oh, okay.
Guy. He's basically free.
He does have a high ankle sprain.
Yes.
So, but he did avoid a fracture, so it did look worse than it was, because I know he got carted off and stuff.
Right.
So I don't think he'll be 100% by week 1, 2, 3, but I do think he'll be active and kind of work his way back on the field. So
very, very explosive guy that, it'll be interesting how A.D. Mitchell fits into that offense, but he's probably their wide receiver 2 as well. So
No, I think he's worth the dart throw. A couple receivers for me. Mike Williams. I think he's got touchdown potential. He's a big threat for Aaron Rodgers. I know he's
Yep.
coming off that ACL. I think weeks 1 through 4, he's going to be on a snap count like Bruce Hall was. And then from there on, he's going to be released. So from week 5 on, I think he's going to be very playable for me.
Yeah.
Josh Palmer. I think he's the wide receiver 1 in Los Angeles. I know everyone loves Lad McConkey. I don't think he's a guy who stayed healthy at the University of Georgia. He wasn't the guy at the University of Georgia. So what makes you think he's going to be the guy in the NFL? Demarcus Robinson, wide receiver 3 for a good offense, good passing offense in LA. He popped up a couple times, had a couple nice games. I'm always going to love my former Gator there in Demarcus Robinson. And Darius Slayton. You can get him for less than free. You can get him for negative, whatever. He's someone that has been the Giants' leading receiver the past 2 seasons. I think everyone forgets that. He has a good connection with Daniel Jones. He's a deep threat. And I think Malik Neighbors, a lot of attention is going to be on him as warranted. But I think Darius Slayton is going to have some deep potential. I think he can put up some nice games for you. Real quick, I'll talk some tight ends, and then I'll let you hand it to you, and we'll get out of here.
Cool.
Jawan Johnson, for me, is someone that a lot of people are on his hype train. Then he had that foot injury, that fracture, which is just a fracture. It needs time. It's not really a whole, like, I'm worried about him long term.
Sure.
I think he's going to be ready closer to the beginning of the season. I really like Jawan Johnson here because we talked about it. Is it going to be Shaheed? Is it going to be Kamara? Is it going to be Johnson, Hill? Who's going to be that second wide receiver threat or target, right? And I think Johnson has a chance to do it at a very low price. And then Hunter Henry, the whether it's Brissett or May, they need the tight end there in New England. They have to. Hunter Henry's shown he can be, a tight end, a red zone threat. I think he's going to pick it up some touchdowns there, and I think he's going to be a top target for them. So those are 2 guys that I like later. A lot of tight ends I like this year. All right, who you got to wrap us up?
Yeah, so let's just talk a little bit about going back to Matt's question earlier. It looked like he had Ford listed as his last pick or last guy on his list, at least. I'm not a huge Jerome Ford guy from a fantasy standpoint, just because I can get Deontay Foreman basically for free, and they're the same guy. Looking back historically, they put up very similar numbers. I think Deontay Foreman's a little bit more explosive.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a Jerome Ford guy last year. As a Jerome Ford owner, he was a headache all year round. So I'm taking a dart throw at Deontay Foreman over Jerome Ford, partially because I was a Jerome Ford owner last year and it was a pain the entire year. But looking at them side to side, they're the same guy. Deontay Foreman, you can get 4, 5, 6, 8 rounds later. If not, pick him up on the waiver wire.
Yeah. No, this is someone you've talked me into. This is someone we're probably both going to be playing some anytime touchdowns week 1, 2, 3, especially when Nick Chubb is out. Can he take the Kareem Hunt role? Kareem Hunt had a shit ton of touchdowns last year, most notably 2 in the playoffs, a nice little 11-1 cash there. But yeah, Foreman, you're right. Like, Jerome Ford hasn't super separated himself. He obviously had that scary neck injury there, and thankfully he's okay. He's already back with the team practicing. So I do like Foreman as someone you definitely kind of talked me into because he's free, and I think we're going to get some nice prices on him in the anytime touchdown market.
Yep.
All right, folks.
Really agree.
If you couldn't tell, we're jacked up for football. It's 20 days away. We just, spent an hour and 40 minutes talking about football. We love football. So if you love football like us, please, give us a like, comment, subscribe, do all those good things. We're a new channel. We're trying to build ourselves as we get ready for our first season. So if you've enjoyed this and liked hanging out with us, cracking some cold ones, shooting the shit, please show us some love. You got anything for the good people before we get out of here, brother?
Yeah, come this time next week, we're taking a little bit of a break from the NFL and previewing some college football, as college football does start a week or so earlier than the NFL. We're going to take a little bit of a break from NFL talk, give some maybe hot takes on some college football kind of stuff. Maybe, list our top 12, our playoff team, something like that.
Yep.
And get rolling from a college standpoint.
Yeah, don't worry. We'll be giving you some action. We'll be giving our favorite over-underers as far as season longs. Yep. Guys, teams to make the playoffs, Heisman odds, stuff like that. So we're going to have some fun markets there, chop it up. We're going to obviously be We'll probably still start with a little bit of NFL training camp update, do the news, and then we'll get into some college stuff. and get in and out in there. But yeah, hey, wherever you're watching us now, go ahead and follow us on the socials. Make sure we're going to be posting different stuff on the different socials. So make sure, whether you're a Twitter guy or gal, a YouTube, TikTok, all these things that I feel like I'm too old to be on. Follow us, give us some validation there so I don't feel like an old loser. But no, we appreciate you hanging out with us, folks.
Love the questions. Love the questions.
Love the question. Yeah, we love the chat popping off. If you got a question, interact with us. That's why we do it. We want to build a nice fam over here at the Degen Docs. But you know what they say, folks. A lock a day keeps the bookie away, and we got your prescription right on here. So join us next week, same time. We'll be talking college football. And from the Degen Docs, we are out of here. What's up, Degens? Doc here. As a proud member of the U.S. Army and a lover of football, sometimes those two things cross over on here. But as you probably already know, as a lowly captain, these are just my opinions. These are not opinions that are representative of the entire DoD or the U.S. Army. The same thing goes for any references to any commercial products or hyperlinks. Again, that does not constitute an endorsement from the DoD or the Army. I hope you enjoyed the show, and as always, let it ride, baby.